I'm Geoffrey Ironfist in World of Tanks. I'm going to go over the proposed balance, so-called or unbalanced changes that are at the moment being tested in the test server, in the Sandbox test server. And you can join in if you like. You have to download the server. It will be like an additional client for the game, and then you can go into that and play at least one battle. If you want to give Wargaming your feedback, you have to play at least one battle, and then on the 19th of February you're going to get some kind of questionnaire or something. You can give them their feedback of what you think. So I'm going to go over briefly the changes and the most essential changes as far as balancing is concerned. Of course, they're going to remove all historical historical tanks up to tier 5, or the majority of them. They're going to leave a few historical tanks, and then they're going to leave all the fictional fantasy tanks that you find, like the very super heavies that were never actually existed, and so on. So all these are going to stay. All the historical ones, the majority will leave the game. But you could still play them if you have them, and you can buy them as premiums and so on. In any case, so let's go over the essential balance changes, okay? So here's the KV1. This is how it is at the moment, as we know it, and I'll show you how tanks are as we know them and as they will become. So here I'm showing you, for example, the Panzer IV-A. This is a tier 3 tank, and it has a tier 3 tank has 270 hit points. It will get 620 hit points. This is a change of 130% in hit points. So it will be an increase of 130% at tier 4 of the hit points of the vehicles. The other thing you see is that previously it had a good dart gun. It had 38 penetration, but that's okay for tier 3. It could cause 175 damage. Well, now it has 0 penetration. If it had penetrated, it would cause 90 damage, so about half of what it would have caused previously. But that, if it penetrated, now it has 0 penetration, so it will never penetrate. In fact, it will never cause 90 HP damage. Now, if you hit with the HE cell, it will cause something in the region on average of about 40 damage. On average, but it could be as low as 1 hit point or 2 hit points. It could go up to maybe 60, 70 hit points maximum, something like that. This is how it's going to be when it's implemented. We go over to the next one. This is the Hetzer, the tank that everyone likes. So currently, right now, the Hetzer has a terrific gun, as we know it, that fires HE, causes 410 damage with 53 penetration. That is very often capable of penetrating tanks of its tier or below. And if it doesn't penetrate higher tier tanks, it can still cause something like of the order, on average, of about 150 to 100 damage, okay? However, now, how it's going to be? Well, it's going to cause 0 damage. So it has 0 chance of penetration with a gun. If it fires high explosives, it will cause 260. It would have caused 205 penetration damage if it penetrated. But it will never penetrate. So right now, actually, with HE rounds, it will cause something like, on average, about 80 damage. On average, could cause as little as 2 or 1 hit points damage. It could cause 160 or so. It will never reach 205 damage if you fire HE. So you will never fire HE, basically. The AP round has increased. Now it can cause 425 damage, but it has very little penetration, 64, so it cannot penetrate higher tier tanks. You can penetrate higher tier tanks only now and cause damage to them with the premium round, the 104 penetration. That still cannot penetrate all high tier tanks, but it can penetrate some of them. It cannot penetrate tier 6 tanks, for example, the majority. It can penetrate some tier 5 tanks, but not all, depending on the angle as well. And then it will cause 150 damage. And so basically, to fire higher tier tanks now, you have to use gold all the time, because HE basically is useless now in the Hetzer. And you can only fire gold at higher tier tanks, and same on lower tier tanks you can fire normal AP. That's how it's going to work for this tank. And since it's no longer in-your-face kind of brawler, because high explosives will not cause significant damage anymore, basically you have to use it as a traditional, typical sniper, fire from a bush from a distance. Then the dispersion of this tank is huge. It's 0.49, so 0.5. It's 0.49 with my crew, but 0.5 or 0.51 without the crew. And so, I mean, as a sniper, this is useless. In-your-face brawler, it's useless. It's basically going to be a totally useless tank. Nobody will play it. The hit points of the vehicle will go from 270 to 510. That represents an increase of 88, let's say 90%. This is going to be the case for, I think, the majority of tier 4 tanks. So tier 3 tanks will increase by 130% of their hit points. Tier 4 by 88%. And higher tiers will increase by smaller percentages gradually until you reach about tier 8. Then it will stabilize about 20%. So I'll go over the higher tier tanks as well, just hanging there. So here's another tank, that's a tier 4. It has basically the same gun as the Hetzer, except it cannot fire AP. It can only fire premium rounds, or it can fire high explosives. Otherwise, it's a similar gun as the Hetzer. And this now, again, will not penetrate with high explosives. So it will be forced, basically. It will be forced to fire gold. You can only play this tank and fire gold from now on, basically, if the changes go through. Okay, let's move on to another tier 4 tank. This is the Marder 38T. Similar, as I said, it goes from 270 hit points to 510. That's an increase of 88% in hit points. It had a very weak gun that couldn't cause damage at all with HE, so we can forget that. Its premium rounds could cause 110 damage. It will still cause 110 damage, but now can cause more damage with AP with 105 penetration, but that still cannot penetrate, let's say, the turret of a KV-1. It cannot penetrate the whole of a Churchill. It cannot penetrate most of OI experimental, and then if you go to tier 6, you cannot penetrate most of them with normal AP. So it will have then to fire premium rounds again, and you know, because the hit point pool of heavy tanks increases, it means that you have to fire something like, it depends, 40% more for a tier 6 tank, or possibly 50-60% more gold rounds for a tier 5 tank, let's say the KV-1 if it's hold down, or the Churchill if for some reason you don't want to try to aim the turret, and so on. So, or if it's moving, it's hard to aim the turret. And so basically means that gold spam will increase. But what's the downside of that? Basically, to kill, let's say, a Churchill, you have to fire 60% more gold shells to kill it. Unless it's not moving, you can hit the turret. But if it's moving, you have to fire 60% more gold at it. While you're firing, I mean, you need to fire, I don't know, 10 shots to kill it or something. While you're shooting 10 shots at the Churchill will not necessarily be stationary, or other tanks will not be stationary. Tanks will be moving around. You might get spotted. Now, this tank is 1 shot or 2 shot if you get spotted. You know, basically it's dead if you get spotted. What that means basically is that we have a buff on heavy tanks because they get more HP and you need to shoot more gold to kill them if they're higher tier. And then you get a nerf of all situational tanks, like sort of snipers, bush fighters, ridgeline fighters, any tank, flankers, any tank that needs to do something risky. Either, you know, it can easily get shot or tracked and killed in the open. For example, if it tries to flanker, like the T-34, might get tracked in the open, or you know, another flanker is the potential flanker, I guess, is the Panzer 4D or the Panzer 3J as a good flanker. Now, if you track a Panzer 3J while it's flanking, it's dead. Basically, it's dead in the water. Yeah, and so it needs like to shoot, I don't know how many, 15 shots to kill a KV-1, but then you track it out. while he's flanking, and it's dead. If it's a ridgeline fighter, the same. Basically, all German tanks that are very situational, all the mediums, will be now nerfed. All glass cannons, all snipers, all glass cannon TDs will be nerfed, because if it gets spotted firing from a bush, it has to fire like 6% more shots, then it's dead. Comparatively, or by comparison, the heavy tanks like the KV-1 will be buffed by comparison. And these were already, I mean, heavy tanks were already the most effective tanks in the game for carrying games. So if you look at win rates, heavy tanks and heavily armored mediums have the highest win rates. If you just check win rates on random, you find it's the heavy tanks and heavily armored mediums that have the best win rates, because they are the least situational. So the other tanks, you know, now that you get a good game fighting from ridge lines or shooting from a bush and a sniper or something like that, but it depends on the enemy making mistakes, a lot of mistakes in one battle, or having a lot of bad players in the enemy team in one battle, and you have bad players on your own team who can't deal with the bad players on the enemy team, and then they provide you with opportunities to do well. But that's, you know, in just those few cases where, you know, you're lucky. And most of the time in the situational tanks, whether it's ridgeline fighters or flankers or snipers, you don't have good games on average. But in a heavy tank, at least in my heavy tanks, and I've shown several replays, you have good games easily. You just blunder forward and have a good game. You don't have to do anything special. So now it will become even more idiot-proof, these tanks, like the KV-1 and so on. And, you know, the all experimental, the v.2.0, and all, you know, the defenders, so on. So let's move on. So here's the KV-1 as tier 5, and it has hit point pool 640. It will go up to 1040. So that's an increase for about 62.5%. But on average, these tier tanks will get a buff in the hit point pool by 60%. So you need 60% more shots to kill them. Then here's the loadout. So just to see the costs of ammunition stay the same, but the effectiveness changes. So you know, so here I'm using the tier 6 gun, the 85mm F30, and this will get now 0 penetration for the high explosive round, and the damage, the alpha, will become halved to 140. Previously it was 280, so it'll be exactly halved. This is generally the case, except that it's not really 140, as I said before, because now you're not penetrating. You have 0 chance of penetrating. Probably the maximal damage you can cause now is about 120 or so, maximum. And the average will be around 60 to 70, probably around 60 or so on average. But you could cause as little damage as 1 or 2 hit points. Yeah, so anything between 1 hit point and about 120 hit points is possible now. The average will be around 60, I suppose, hit points. You know, your average damage you cause if you fire HE. You can cause only damage to external modules, that is, only damage to the tracks. No other module damage is possible now if you fire HE. And so you'll be forced to fire, you know, at this level, you'll be forced to fire APCR, more gold, at highly armored targets, or AP at less armored targets. Or if you can flank them, but, you know, whatever. I mean, sometimes it's not always easy to flank certain tanks. And now there'll be a high risk associated with trying to flank enemy tanks, enemy heavies. So that's for the tier 5 heavy, the KV-1 that most people have. So you can look at the stats here and make your own comparisons. So let's move on to TD, tier 5, the French Somoise 35CA. That is how it is at the moment. It has 330 hit points. It will go up to 530 hit points. So that's again a change of 60. What is it? Change of 61%. So about 60%, as I said. And then you can see the gun values, the penetration. So it currently has 54 penetration with HE, which, you know, it's still possible to penetrate. It will no longer penetrate. Penetration will be 0. The HE will go, the alpha HE will go from 360 to 180, exactly halved, but because you can no longer penetrate, the reality will go to about 70, not 180. You expect 70 damage on average. And then the APCR round will have a damage of 330. That's what it had before. But the AP will go up. And the AP is decent in this tank. You can use AP in this one. It has 165 penetration at tier 5. This can penetrate most tier 5 tanks. It will only have difficulty penetrating maybe some tier 7 tanks and, you know, some tier 6 super heavies, maybe like the OI or something like that. But you can still use the AP gun on this tank because it's an exceptionally good gun. This tank has, you know, the top tank. We're not talking about stock guns. Yeah, I mean, stock guns, forget them. So then we go to the OI Experimental, another tank that, you know, is kind of notorious. So some people may have it. You can make comparisons. So again, we have an increase of 6% in its hit point pool. Currently has a decent HE. So you see my loadout is 90% high explosives in this tank. Well, high explosives now have 60 penetration, 60 millimeter penetration, cause 440 damage if they penetrate. Well, they will no longer penetrate. Penetration will drop to 0, so you can no longer use HE rounds in this tank. They'll be useless. You can only now basically either fire normal rounds that have a penetration of 60, I think. Penetration is still very, very low at tier 5 with AP rounds. So basically you have to shoot gold in this tank from now on if you want to play it. Then we'll move on to, I'm going to show you a tier 5 medium, a German one, just for the sake of comparison, so you can see there's a certain consistency in everything that's going on. So this is the Panzer 3/4. It will get a 66% increase in its hit point pool. It was 480, it will increase to 800. That's a 66% increase in its pool, so that's quite an increase in its hit point pool, which this tank needs because German mediums are hopeless. But you know, these changes are very small. You know, these variations within a tier are very small. So in tier 5, tanks will get an increase between 60% and 66% in the hit points. So, and all the other stats, I mean, you can see them there, like I described before. An interesting tank is KV2. The KV2 will stay as it was. So previously it had 98 average penetration with HE rounds. Well, that will remain 98 and the same damage. The problem now is, however, the following. This tank is still nerfed. And then you will not cause damage to internal modules. You can only track with a new mechanic. So it's slightly nerfed, not too much, but it's slightly nerfed. But it's the only tank that's not significantly nerfed. So except that you can now cause more damage if you fire normal AP. So before you could cause with normal AP 700 damage if you penetrate it. Now you can cause 870, so slightly more damage if you penetrate. So you can use normal AP in some situations, you know, whatever. Since you can penetrate with 85 with HE, and you can cause some damage, I expect people will still be shooting HE with this tank. Then another tier 6 tank that I play a lot, and I'm going to show you a replay to show you how situational and how these tanks, this kind of situational tanks have become even more situational. I'll show you what's going on. This tank, this situational tanks, the flankers, the ridgeline fighters, and the snipers will become less played, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. So again, this tank gets a buff in its hit point pool. The buff is 41%. We're at tier 6. So tier 6 tanks get a buff of about 40%, 41%. It gets a buffing hit point pool. It could have with 80 rounds a penetration of 54, but now it'll have 0 penetration. So I often use HE high explosives to blind shoot with this tank. So most of its loadout is high explosives, and I was using them to blind shoot, to bushes and so on. I mean, you can still do it, but the problem is every time you blind shoot, there's a chance you get detected. And if the chances, you can no longer penetrate if you hit someone, and it can only cause, you know, some small damage of the order of, you know, whatever it's going to be. Now it says here it's going to be 180 average damage. That's if it penetrated, will never will. Real average damage will now be something of the order of 80 or 70, something like that. So is it worth risking to shoot at someone and maybe 70, cause 70 damage on average, possibly less, and get detected, just for blind shooting? Maybe you hit someone who's there, maybe you cause 70 hit points of damage, maybe, but you risk getting detected. You see, the whole thing changes now. The whole way people will play these tanks will change. And then moving on to tier 7 tanks. So this is my IS-2. The changes are of the same kind. You can compare the changes for the gun, the shells, and so on. The hit point pool will increase by 26.5%. So that's at tier 7. So I expect an increase between 25 and 28% at tier 7. And then at tier 8, so I have the defender here, the increase in hit point pool is of the order of 21% for the defender, and it's going to be something around that range, 21-22%, and then that stabilizes for tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10, as far as I can tell, around about there, around 20% increase in hit point pool. So how does that influence the game overall? I mean, you can also see the other stats, you know, the gun stats. You can compare them, you know, between the two. You can see it gets now 0 damage with HE and so on. So how does this change now? Situational tanks, as I said, the flankers, ridgeline fighters, and snipers will need more shots. You need more shots, and more of a chance you get detected and shot at and tracked. If you're tracked in a tank like that and you don't have a repair kit, or if you're tracked the second time, you're dead because you have no armor. Most TDs, glass cannons, will be shot 2 or 3 shots and they're dead if they're detected. And so basically you go straight to tier 5 because now all the other tanks have been taken out of the tree. Then at tier 5 you have the option to go for, let's say, TDs, mediums, or heavies basically. Or light tanks, but light tanks, you know, nobody plays light tanks because they're extremely situational. And so basically you have a choice of going for TDs, mediums, or heavies, which are the tanks that are used to influence games a little bit more often. But especially if you check the stats, it's heavy armored mediums and the heavier heavies that are effective in influencing games and carrying games and have high win rates. So, however, the problem is, let's say, if playing heavily armored tanks, if you play, let's say, the KV-1, you may come up against the, what is it, KV-150 or something else, a higher tier tank, tier 7, the IS-2, and then, or the IS, and then you stuff, basically. You can't hurt him even with gold anymore. You have to spam gold because there's no other way. You'll hate spamming gold at the IS in order to kill it with a KV-1. And have to spam like 25-30% more gold. So basically you quickly go through the line to get to the top tiers, because then the top tier heavy tanks will now be, you know, the easiest ones to play. Because they are no-brainer, they have the most armor, they could already influence battles more, and so now it will be even more the case. So the win rates of these tanks, if these changes go through, should increase even more, and the disparity with other tanks, such as TDs, especially lights, and SPGs, will vastly increase now. And so everyone will be just going to straight to tier 10 as fast as they can and get a tier 10 tank like the VK100 or the Type 5 or something like this that's hard to penetrate and has lots of hit points. and everyone will be forced, lower tiers, to fire gold at you, and they'll go bankrupt, and so they won't be doing that. They'll just try and save credits to do anything they can, buy their way to tier 10 so they can get another type 5, and there'll be a slugfest between type 5s and VK100s and stuff like that at tier 10, with all kinds of new players who don't know what they're doing, and it will be a total shit show basically now. But wargaming will be making money out of this, because you either have to spend gold, or you have to fast track your way to tier 10. So again, you spend real money. Either way, you're going to spend more gold or more money in this new meta. SPGs, I haven't said anything about them, and I don't have any images to show at the moment, but SPGs will get 2 additional rounds. One of them will cause more damage but will not stun. This will be useful for blind shooting or counter battery, for example, where your teammates will not be able to hit that tank if you stun it. So for tanks that your teammates cannot shoot, either because the scout died or whatever, then you might use this premium round that costs 4 times more. But then you need to have it preloaded, and so you never have it preloaded. Basically, you only load this premium round at the beginning of the game, I think, to counter battery ones. And then after that you switch to the normal stun rounds. And the reason for this is that the accuracy of the guns of SPGs does not increase. So there's absolutely no point of firing AP with SPGs, because the accuracy is so awful you never hit anything. And so, especially because you have to preload it. And you might hit a tracked vehicle if it stays tracked, but you will not know when an enemy vehicle will become tracked. And so there's no point of loading AP. It's not necessarily a more effective round. You'll be either loading the premium round or the normal stun round. Okay, so let's go over to our replay, because I want to show you an example of a replay. So here I'm playing the ARL V39, which is one of my favorite tanks at the moment, but it's guaranteed I'll stop playing it once these changes go through, if they do, and if I continue playing these tanks. So we are in the Abi map, and I'm going to take a sniping position, which I normally take with my TDs at the beginning of the game, until the base looks safe, and then I can move on and try to shoot from more forward positions if the base looks safe. So I'm going to go to the standard bush, where almost always we have one TD camping in this bush. If you're an SPG player, you know where to hit at the beginning of the game with your special premium round. You hit here in this map. And so I knocked down a tree. There's no counter battery, luckily. So I've loaded HP, or loaded HE, high explosives, because at the beginning of the battle in this tank, I'm used to firing high explosives. However, now a tank has appeared, which I do not expect. And I hit it for 2 HP damage, and I panicked at this point, and I didn't realize I could not turn so easily. And so I got detected now. I hadn't been detected before. And so I'm being murdered now. But luckily the HP pool has gone up, and he was firing AP, so I wasn't killed. I have survived, but I lost half my my hit points, and I was shot by a sniper hiding somewhere that I cannot see where he's hiding, possibly inside the monastery. And now a defender is approaching. This is going to be fun. So now I'm still firing HE, and it didn't even track him. So high explosives did not even track the defender. Useless. So I'm switching to AP. Hopefully I can hit the defender with AP. And I'm going to change my tact, because now I have very little hit points left, and I'm worried that I may get blasted by the art if I go back to the same place. And I'm going to surprise the defender, but everything's red. At the front, I don't have anywhere. You see, maybe way at the back where the fuel tanks are, I could have hit him. Why I knocked down those trees and so on? Because I'm expecting the enemy team might advance along the hill on the left. Now, I missed. You see, it's not so easy hitting the weak points. I mean, the side of the defender is a weak point. And some people say, oh, yeah, enemy tanks have weak points. But if you're shooting with a TD and the enemy heavy is running between houses and so on, it's not so easy. It's different if you are in a heavy. Okay, so I got this guy. I had even loaded AP because I was shooting the defender. And so that was an easy kill because the enemy light was low on health and it was a tier 6 light. So here's a defender. You see, green, but it bounced because it's a defender. So, you know, some tanks have weak spots on the side. I hadn't loaded on time. Now he's turned his front towards me. I still can hit the side of his turret if I can manage, or the side of his, yeah, I hit his engine. His engine deck have been spotted. So this is the other thing. It's very easy to get spotted now. Even though I was double bushed there, I got spotted. Of course, the enemy tank was nearby. I don't know if the Russians have better crews or something, because there were a lot of Russians in the test server. So maybe the Russians have better crews or something. I mean, the defender was very close. But you see the tactic the defender was using? Basically, he went straight and then started kind of wiggling around at the front of the base. And all the TDs got spotted, all the tanks that were defending the base got spotted because everyone had started shooting at him and he was very hard to kill. And so everybody got spotted at the base. And basically all the tanks at the base, well, not all, but a couple of tanks at the base got killed. And just by sending one heavy, top tier heavy forward, we basically lost the game. And I managed to kill him, and it's annoying that I had to kill him in a bottom tier TD, but that's how it was. And now I'm expecting the other top tier heavy to turn up here. There it is. And of course I can maybe slightly pan him, but I expect it is at an angle, so I'm not shooting, because I think it'll bounce like it did with the defender. So I'm spotting for my team, but my team is like other 3 teammates left, and there's no TDs. Well, there's one TD. Okay, I mean, it's hopeless. So I just shot his weak spot with APCR for some minimal amount of damage, and you know, he was one of those two-nosed monsters of the deep, and he just annihilated me with a single shot. Basically, top tier heavies will have a really easy time now, really easy time, and everyone will be researching the heavy lines, and everyone will be trying to get the top tier, the tier 10 heavies as fast as they can. And World of Tanks will now become World of tier 10 heavy fantasy tanks if these games go through. So yeah, that is the future if the changes go through. You can still download the test server and play a few battles, so give the feedback and tell them what you think. Thank you for watching.